Now, one question that many of us have right now is why are burnout rates so high? And the answer, or at least part of the answer to that question, and again, I'm not telling you anything that you probably don't already realize, but we have just gone through a couple of very challenging years. Those who've taken any sort of disaster training have probably seen a graph like the one that I'm illustrating here for you. It illustrates what happens in response to a severe crisis, like a global pandemic, for example. The vertical axis on this graph is emotional highs at the top and emotional lows at the bottom, and the horizontal axis is time. So after a disaster strikes, it's very normal for us to go through what's called the heroic phase, as we all try to rise up and try to address or meet the crisis that's come our way. Then we go through a honeymoon phase where we see a lot of community bonding and a lot of altruism at work. But this is generally followed by a phase of disillusionment where stress and fatigue of dealing with this, challenge takes its toll. And this is where our original optimism can turn into frustration and discouragement. Now, I don't know if that sounds familiar to any of the rest of you, but it definitely describes some of the things that I've been seeing in my local community here over the course of the last couple of years. The question is, where are we right now? And if I were to guess, I'd say that we are somewhere in the reconstruction phase where we're trying to adjust to a new normal and we're trying to rebuild our lives, both personally and professionally. And there's recognition that during a reconstruction phase, this is an opportunity for new growth, and lots of new things can happen during this phase. But as we all know, it's not without its frustrations. And we will feel those frustrations in a number of ways, some of which may be contributing to our current state of burnout. There are lots of theories about what's causing the Great Resignation. My theory, that is based on a neuroscience perspective, is this. I feel like we have just undergone incredible stress due to the global pandemic, as well as other things that we've been facing as a international and national community. On top of that, we've also been experiencing workplace burnout. And those two factors together, I think, have contributed to the Great Resignation. So the key factors in this formula, if you will, are stress and burnout. And so if we learn how to manage stress and burnout more effectively, maybe we will learn how to manage the outcome or perhaps change the outcome altogether. Now, granted, a lot of the pandemic stress was completely out of our control, and I'm not trying to diminish that. But I think what we have done as a international community over the past couple of years is we've learned how to wrap our minds around the parts of a global crisis that we can control and do something about. And that's what I'd like to focus on today. Derek Thompson recently wrote an article for Atlantic magazine. And what he pointed out in this article is that crises are often catalysts for growth and change. And he cited some past examples of this in our history. For example, after the Great Chicago Fire in the 1870s, this is what catalyzed the invention of modern skyscrapers. World War II not only catalyzed the development of modern weapons and bombs, but it also boosted the development of things like the flu vaccine and penicillin. And then Derek Thompson asked the question, what changed during COVID-19? So quoting his article here, he said, "We may look back to the pandemic as a crucial inflection point in something more fundamental. Americans' attitudes toward work." I'm continuing to quote his article here. He said, "Since early last year, many workers have had to reconsider the boundaries between boss and worker, family time and work time, home and office." So the central question that I'd like to explore with you during our webinar today is, how can we reshape our work experience so that we can avoid burnout and maybe slow down or stop the Great Resignation?